These flags will represent what I believe is a true testament from one member of Congress to say to them, please know that you have won a battle. You were able to bring Mr. Garcia back to this country with your work, but that battle doesn't mean that the war is over. We still have a war to fight because we have an authoritarian president in office. I have in my hand, Mr. Speaker, a column from the Washington Post. This story from the Washington Post, dated June 9th, 2025, reads as follows. This is the style of the story. It reads, California Governor Gavin Newsom says Trump is stepping toward authoritarianism. An excerpt from the actual story reads, California Governor Gavin Newsom should be arrested. This is something that President Trump said. This is from the story. President Donald Trump said he thought California Governor Gavin Newsom should be arrested, a claim that Newsom described as an unmistakable step toward authoritarianism. I concur with what he said about the step, but I would simply say this. I think we're already there. We are in a country wherein a president has devolved democracy into authoritarianism. This president has done so by using executive orders. He has done so by using the very courts to move his executive orders, but by moving them such that they move slowly and get to a final judgment that would be against him. This president has disrespected the federal courts. He has disrespected the orders of the court. When the courts have said to him, even if you differ with our orders, you have to appeal these orders. You cannot decide that you're going to proceed, notwithstanding the court's implementation, a failure to implement the orders that you think should be implemented. This president has...
Try this 15-second ritual before bed and see what happens to toenail fungus while you sleep.
To work effectively. Quite honestly, little seems to work or have been effective. Congress passes something intended to fix disaster response, but bureaucrats continue to complicate the law with added regulations. This makes the implementation and process more confusing. At times, it seems the process actually gets worse, not better. The process becomes even more unclear when you add in the numerous federal agencies that are now involved in disaster. The whole point of FEMA was to carry out the president's authority in disasters and manage the entire federal government response. However, we seem to have gotten away from that, and we have many agencies, often with conflicting requirements and rules involved, slowing the process even more. Today, I hope we can touch on not just what is happening or happened in Texas and other recent disasters, but how we can work together effectively to fix our emergency management system. Our constituents, American people, are depending on it. It is our duty. How do we make it work better for the communities hit by the disasters, and how do we also respect the taxpayer? I appreciate the leadership of the full committee, Chairman Sam Graves and the ranking member, Mr. Larson, for their work in trying to tackle these issues with their legislation, and we look forward to seeing that very shortly. With that, I look forward to hearing from our witness. The chair now recognizes the ranking member, Mr. Stanton, for 5 minutes in his opening statement.
Mr. Chairman, before I begin my testimony, I ask for unanimous consent that the committee observe a moment of silence to honor the 135 lives lost in the Texas floods and to pray for the safe return of those still missing.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the sake of time, I ask unanimous consent to submit for the record news accounts corroborating the details I'm about to provide in my opening statement. Mr. Chairman, thank you for holding...
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for holding this hearing and focusing our mission to the federal emergency management agency. Every Democrat on this panel accepts that challenge, and I hope we can work together in a bipartisan way to get this done. The news out of Texas is heartbreaking. On July 4th, flash floods swept through Kerrville and nearby communities, claiming 135 lives, including 37 children. We have learned the faces and stories of the victims, young girls whose dreams were stolen, camp staff who gave their lives leading children to safety, a father who punched through the window to save his family before bleeding to death from his injuries, and two little sisters swept away together, later found holding hands. So many grieving neighbors and families on the ground who have been working around the clock in response to this disaster. To those brave women and men, we see you, we thank you, and we will not forget your heroism. Meanwhile, the acting FEMA administrator, David Richardson, before us today, was missing in action. For the first 48 hours, the most critical window for search and rescue, he never visited the National Response Coordination Center. For more than a week, he stayed away from Texas, and for 10 days, he made no statement about this tragedy. Not a word of sympathy or reassurance to the public. When he appeared finally in Texas on July 12th, it felt like a box-checking exercise to quiet his critics. He stayed only a few hours. But in his rush, Mr. Richardson failed to check the most important box, basic human decency. This tragedy forces some incredibly hard questions. Did the FEMA administrator fulfill his legal duty? Did he fulfill his moral duty? Did the administrator sitting before us do everything that he could to save lives? The FEMA administrator is the primary federal coordinator for disaster response. That means anticipating needs, acting proactively, moving resources swiftly, even without waiting for a specific state request. FEMA's own national response framework demands proactive search and rescue. These reforms were put into place after Hurricane Katrina, when federal failures cost lives. Yet nearly 20 years later, history has tragically repeated itself. Secretary Noem required her personal sign-off on every contract above $100,000. That bottleneck delayed urban search and rescue teams for more than 72 hours. By the time many urban search and rescue teams reached Texas, no one had been found alive for days. Days. On July 5th, less than 24 hours after the tragedy, FEMA's call center contract expired because of this $100,000 sign-off policy. The result, the vast majority of calls from survivors went unanswered. Families desperate for shelter and aid were met with silence. Can you imagine losing a family member, losing your home, and having your call go unanswered when you're looking for a lifeline? Yet on July 11th, with over 100 people still missing and search teams still working to find people, President Trump and Secretary Noem called it, quote, the best FEMA response ever, unquote. All while this administration was working to dismantle FEMA, the very agency whose workers were still risking their lives to save others. According to CNN, FEMA search and rescue chief resigned in frustration over the Texas response. DHS bureaucratic hurdles cost his team critical time and likely lives. This committee has a duty to uncover why FEMA failed to meet its obligations and ensure no community ever faces these failures again. So I look forward to questioning Mr. Richardson about these stunning breakdowns in leadership and how we fix them. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Tesla is finished. Elon has failed. That is what they want you to believe. But tech expert Jeff Brown, who told everybody to buy Tesla back in 2018, has uncovered something big that just happened in Tesla's AI division. Jeff, you mind sharing what you found?
Well, Chris, it's nothing short of the biggest AI breakthrough we've seen yet. Thanks to Tesla's AI breakthrough, just weeks from now, AI will come off our computer screens and manifest itself here in the physical world, all while creating a whole new phase of artificial intelligence growth virtually overnight.
Right, but this AI boom has already been so huge, Jeff.
To work effectively. Quite honestly, little seems to work or have been effective. Congress passes something intended to fix disaster response, but bureaucrats continue to complicate the law with added regulations. This makes the implementation and process more confusing. At times, it seems the process actually gets worse, not better. The process becomes even more unclear when you add in the numerous federal agencies that are now involved in disaster. The whole point of FEMA was to carry out the president's authority in disasters and manage the entire federal government response. However, we seem to have gotten away from that, and we have many agencies, often with conflicting requirements and rules involved, slowing the process even more. Today, I hope we can touch on not just what is happened in Texas and other recent disasters, but how we can work together effectively to fix our emergency management system. Our constituents, American people, are depending on it. It is our duty. How do we make it work better for the communities hit by the disasters, and how do we also respect the taxpayer? I appreciate the leadership of the full committee, Chairman Sam Graves and the ranking member, Mr. Larson, for their work in trying to tackle these issues with their legislation, and we look forward to seeing that very shortly. With that, I look forward to hearing from our witness. The chair now recognizes the ranking member, Mr. Stanton, for 5 minutes in his opening statement.
Mr. Chairman, before I begin my testimony, I ask for unanimous consent that the committee observe a moment of silence to honor the 135 lives lost in the Texas floods and to pray for the safe return of those still missing.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the sake of time, I ask unanimous consent to submit for the record news accounts corroborating the details I'm about to provide in my opening statement. Mr. Chairman, thank you for
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for holding this hearing and focusing our mission to the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Every Democrat on this panel accepts that challenge, and I hope we can work together in a bipartisan way to get this done. The news out of Texas
certainly not in time for our vote. But my Republican colleagues will be haunted by those questions. They will answer one day to their conscience, because this nominee is different. This nominee should be rejected. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
I ask unanimous consent that the previous roll call vote occur.
Is there an objection? Without objection, the question occurs on the nomination.
I ask for the yeas and nays.
Is there a sufficient second? There appears to be. Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Alsobrooks, Ms. Baldwin, Mr. Banks, Mr. Barrasso, Mr. Bennett, Mrs. Blackburn, Mr. Blumenthal. Ms. Blunt Rochester, Mr. Booker, Mr. Bozeman, Mrs. Britt, Mr. Budd, Ms. Cantwell, Mrs. Capito, Mr. Cassidy, Ms. Collins, Mr. Coons, Mr. Cornyn, Ms. Cortez Masto, Mr. Cotton, Mr. Kramer, Mr. Crapo, Mr. Cruz, Mr. Curtis, Mr. Daines, Ms. Duckworth, Mr. Durbin, Ms. Ernst, Mr. Fetterman, Mrs. Fisher, Mr. Gallego, Mrs. Gillibrand, Mr. Graham, Mr. Grassley, Mr. Haggerty, Ms. Hassan, Mr. Hawley, Mr. Heinrich, Mr. Hickenlooper, Ms. Hirono, Mr. Hoven, Mr. Husted, Mrs. Hyde-Smith, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Justice, Mr. Kane, Mr. Kelly, Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Kim, Mr. King, Ms. Klobuchar, Mr. Langford, Mr. Lee, Mr. Lujan, Ms. Lummis, Mr. Markey, Mr. Marshall, Mr. McConnell, Mr. McCormick, Mr. Merkley, Mrs. Moody, Mr. Moran, Mr. Moreno, Mr. Mullen, Ms. Murkowski, Mr. Murphy, Mrs. Murray, Mr. Ossoff, Mr. Padilla, Mr. Paul, Mr. Peters, Mr. Reed, Mr. Ricketts, Mr. Risch, Ms. Rosen, Mr. Rounds, Mr. Sanders, Mr. Schatz, Mr. Schiff, Mr. Schmidt, Mr. Schumer, Mr. Scott of Florida, Mr. Scott of South Carolina, Mrs. Shaheen, Mr. Sheehy, Ms. Slotkin, Ms. Smith, Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Thune, Mr. Tillis, Mr. Tuberville, Mr. Van Hollen, Mr. Warner, Mr. Warnock, Ms. Warren, Mr. Welch, Mr. Whitehouse, Mr. Wicker, Mr. Wyden, Mr. Young, Senators voting in the affirmative: Barrasso, Bozeman, Collins, Cornyn, Curtis, Fisher, Graham, Grassley, Husted, Hyde-Smith, Scott of Florida. Senators voting in the negative: Blumenthal, Blunt-Rochester, Cantwell, Duckworth, Hassan, Hirono, Kim, Markey, Merkley, Padilla, Rosen, Schatz, Shaheen, Warner, and Whitehouse. Mrs. Capito, aye. Mr. Risch, aye. Mr. Lujan, no. Mr. Wyden, no. Mr. Ricketts, aye. Ms. Lummis, aye. Mr. Crapo, aye. Mr. Kane, no.
Million lives that it has saved since 2003. You remember when we got in our subcommittee meeting a couple of months ago, there was a lot of consternation after the testimony from our witnesses about the future of PEPFAR. We were in danger of losing this program. The signature program for President George W. Bush. Our chairman went to bat for this program. He found the money for this program, and this program will exist, not forever, but as it was intended to be, a temporary program. We are directing the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, to come up with a transition plan and report back to us under our oversight position to transition this all-important program to African nations, to the Global Fund, and to other entities which can carry it forward. I think that is a significant win in this bill. It is a bipartisan win because I know that the members that I have talked with, including the ranking member of this full committee and the ranking member of the subcommittee, have a deep passion for this program, as we all should. So I applaud you, Mr. Diaz-Balart, in saving PEPFAR. USAID. I'm not going to go into all the crazy programs that somehow got wrapped up over the years that we were paying, the American taxpayers were paying for. You sat here and you heard Secretary Marco Rubio enumerate some of these programs. I think the American taxpayer is disgusted that we got to this level where we were paying this type of money for these programs. And yet I've seen some of these programs that actually work, and I've enumerated those and spoken about them in the news media and to you, some of you here in this committee. That is the type of soft power, although I don't like that term, that we need to continue. And some of those programs will continue thanks to our chairman, Diaz-Balart. Under a new title, under a new branding, these programs will continue as national security investment programs, mirroring the new name for our subcommittee. Because I think we all have to realize at one point, we are $37 trillion in debt. We've got to put America first, but we also have to consider our influence in the rest of the world. And so by continuing with national security investment programs, we are putting down on paper and putting in our minds and our hearts that it doesn't have to do with national security. We should not be spending taxpayer dollars on it. Lastly, I'd like to say, I had an old preacher back in the 80s, a friend of mine, and he had this familiar saying. He said, "It was always right to do right. It's always wrong to do wrong. It's never right to do wrong, and it's never wrong to do right." I will submit to you here today, my friends on the Appropriations Committee, we are doing the right thing. We are making the cuts necessary to move the ball forward, to keep us afloat as a nation, while securing our place on the world stage and our influence. Let's work together to make that happen. Let's continue to have conversations, not just in this committee room, but outside it, so we can work together to make America first, so we can be the strong power that we need to be for the rest of the nation. With that, I yield back. Thank you.
Thank the gentleman. I want to thank him for staying within the time. Chair just wishes to advise members, look, I'm always inclined to be generous with time. But if we can stay within 5 minutes, we are going to have a long day today, just given the sheer number of amendments. That would be helpful. With that, the distinguished gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Clyburn, is recognized for remarks on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for yielding the time, which I am pleased to yield to Leader Hoyer.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Mr. Alford is one of my better friends on the Republican side. I respect him. I respect his remarks. And we are pleased, as the gentleman observed, that PEPFAR has been saved. It was saved from DOGE. It was saved from the Trump administration. And yes, we support that effort. And we applaud the chairman of the subcommittee for doing that. However, when the gentleman talks about limited resources, there are limited resources. And I care a great deal about the debt. We need to deal with $37 trillion of debt, or my great-grandchildren are going to be in real trouble. My grandchildren are going to be in trouble. Maybe my children won't be in so much trouble. But we need to deal with that debt. But a Republican former vice president who was governor of our state once said, the cost of failure far exceeds
changes that we could make right here as a co-equal branch of government, acknowledging our responsibility to humanity. And so with that, I support this amendment. And I would yield back unless there is a person sitting on one of these two tables that has a need for some of my time. I have 2 minutes left. So I yield to the creator of this amendment, if I might.
Recognized.
Mr. Chairman, are there others that?
Gentlelady can still speak, and others will be able to speak, and the gentlelady will be able to close at the
Thank you.
appropriate time.
And I thank the gentlelady for yielding. You know, I'm not a terribly religious person, but I have found over that we're not going to abandon our principles and not step back from what the United States has always been. I know I won't. We each have to answer that question ourselves. I yield back the balance of my time and urge the support of my amendment because someone has to be held accountable.
Thank the gentlelady. Questions now on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from Florida. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. Opinion of the chair, the noes have it. And the amendment is not agreed to. Gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Wasserman Schultz, is recognized for an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask unanimous consent that the amendment that I'm offering be considered as read.
Without objection, the reading of the amendment is dispensed with, and the gentlelady is recognized for remarks on her amendment.
Thank you. This is Wasserman Schultz number 2. I rise to offer an amendment in pursuit of the bipartisan objectives that this bill is designed to address: preventing migration, countering crime, and reducing unaccountable wasteful spending. According to this bill, the quote, America First Opportunity Fund will, quote, furnish assistance that makes America safer, stronger, and more prosperous, unquote. It's more than a little vague. And if I was born yesterday, that would probably sound pretty good. But I'm old enough to remember when Republicans called themselves the party of fiscal responsibility. That is, before they passed a bill that increased the deficit by $3 trillion to give tax cuts for the rich in the dead of night. So here's what this account really is: an unmonitored billion-dollar slush fund for President Trump and his cronies to buy favors for their rich friends. This MAGA slush fund sucks $1.7 billion out of programs that disrupt drug trafficking and stop wars from breaking out. It takes money from accounts that arm our allies with American-made weapons, train law enforcement to go after terrorists, and help freedom fighters push back against dictators. In other words, it's only an opportunity fund if you're seeking opportunities to smuggle fentanyl, run guns for Hamas, or buy yourself a pardon with Trump's meme coins. This slush fund has no oversight, no authorization, no transparency. I'm talking about a slush fund in this bill that we are voting on, and no mandate beyond platitudes. So why is it in the bill? Well, because Donald Trump asked for it. He wants less expert-driven foreign assistance that supports our interests. Instead, Trump wants $1.7 billion in taxpayer funds under his direct control, not our control, his direct control, because he believes he knows better than the experts, and because his personal interests take precedence over the national interests. Let's be clear. We should not be cutting a blank check for the lawless authoritarian who has usurped this committee's constitutional authority to appropriate funding and who has violated the law repeatedly by withholding funding that is law. But of course, I want America to be strong and safe and prosperous, and I know everyone in this room agrees. So I thought to myself, which agency best represents those principles with the best bang for every buck? And the answer was clear: the Inter-American Foundation, or the IAF. For decades, the IAF has been on the front lines of countering criminal activity, illegal migration, and malign foreign influence in the Western Hemisphere. They deliver funds directly to grant recipients across the Americas, with a focus on areas with high levels of out-migration and criminal presence. It's 100% localized, with less than 9% of their budget supporting administrative costs, most of which is used to carefully screen and audit grant recipients. IAF makes us safer by stabilizing at-risk communities, whether it's by keeping young men out of gangs or helping farmers switch from growing coca for cartels over to growing coffee and fruit for American consumers. IAF makes America stronger by serving as a counterweight to the Chinese Communist Party in rural areas that traditional diplomacy just doesn't reach. They build community resistance to illegal mining and fishing by Chinese companies, and they improve the overall perception of the U.S. in Latin American countries. And the IAF makes us more prosperous by reducing the drive to migrate illegally, which protects our workforce and helps connect grant recipients with U.S. companies to diversify away from China and create more American jobs. They do all that with a budget of less than, wait for it, $50 million. For every dollar Americans invest, grant recipients commit $1.36. It creates true sustainable development and local ownership. The Inter-American Foundation is a model of how foreign aid could work and should work. That's why they've impacted millions of lives despite their small footprint. Despite this historic proven success, Trump and DOJ tried to shut IAF down anyway, but they lost in court. This bill only includes $10 million for IAF, the same amount that the White House has designated for shutdown costs. In other words, they want Congress to do their dirty work by shutting down this low-cost, high-impact independent agency. But I would submit that $20 million in IAF's hands would do a lot more good than $1.7 billion in Trump's slush fund. I hope my colleagues will agree to this amendment that will ensure this so-called opportunity fund doesn't miss out on an opportunity to protect the IAF and protect our interests across time.
The amendment is clearly understandable. The implementation, unfortunately, will hamstring the administration's ability to do what the American people elected President Trump to do. So accordingly, I respectfully urge my colleagues to oppose the amendment. And Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, gentlemen. The gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Frankel, is recognized to address the amendment.
Thank you. Well, I'm rising in support of the amendment. I want to recap. I'm going to recap. Mr. Donald Trump brought his then friend, it was his friend, Elon Musk, into town to reduce the deficit. And he thereby fired thousands of people with no rhyme or reason. They canceled all kinds of grants. But we know that was a joke. Why do we know that's a joke? Because within a short period of time, Mr. Donald Trump and the Republicans decided that instead of reducing the deficit, they were going to give tax breaks to the very, very wealthy and to big corporations, and they had about $4+ trillion to the deficit. So then Mr. Musk is no longer the friend of Mr. Trump. Now he's his off friend, and he attacked Mr. Trump. I know it's crazy, isn't it? He attacked Mr. Trump for raising the deficit. But in the meantime, Mr. Musk had fired all these people. And what happened? It was chaos, folks. Don't. You know, I'm going to cry soon because this chaos is bad. But listen, what's happened is so many good people, for no rhyme and reason, who were public servants, they've been fired. Contracts are gone. People around the world are starving. People are not getting their medicine. We're losing our credibility. We're becoming the ugly Americans. So I'm supporting this amendment because I really think it's time for us to know what we're doing. And I yield back.
Thank you, gentlelady. Are there other members wishing to address the amendment? Seeing none, the gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just would say, wouldn't it be interesting to have a report on knowing the domestic economic impact of a foreign aid cancellation? We might ultimately agree with all of that, but to not know what the effect of all of this is doing is really a little bit mindless. If you want to just keep your head in the sand, well, that's up to you. Let me close by reminding everyone that American people are demanding help with the cost of living. The issue that we hear about over and over again. The last thing the administration should do is cancel contracts for American farmers, contractors, drive up the cost of trade, close off future economic growth. We all deserve to know exactly how the Trump administration is hurting communities, undercutting American companies. That's what this amendment gives them, the knowledge. It's knowledge. It's good to have knowledge and details before you make a decision about where you want to go. Urge your support.
Thank the gentlelady. The question is now on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from Connecticut. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. No. The opinion of the chair, the noes have it, and the amendment is not agreed to. Gentlelady from Connecticut, Ms. Delors, recognized for an amendment.
Again, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment at the desk, and and I ask unanimous consent that the reading of the amendment be dispensed with.
Without objection, the reading of the amendment is dispensed with, and the gentlelady is recognized for remarks on her amendment.
I rise to offer this amendment so that this body can understand the cost in dollars, in projects, and in influence of President Trump's decision to dismantle our foreign aid and our soft power. We know that we are in a competition for global leadership with China, which will seize every opportunity to fill the gaps that we leave behind. Just a recent example, barely a week after the U.S. canceled 2 projects in Cambodia, one to encourage child literacy and another to improve nutrition for children under 5, China's International Aid Agency announced funding for programs to achieve near identical goals. Both the American and Chinese programs provided school supplies, offered hand-washing materials, and aimed to improve outcomes for vulnerable families and households, including newborns and children with disabilities. My amendment would require a report that reveals the extent of situations like this, where China is expanding its power and influence in critical regions, countries, and sectors where America previously had deep and productive relationships before they were uprooted by President Trump. The chaos of President Trump's foreign aid freeze has been a gift to China. Mere months after USAID launched a strategic mission in the Pacific, bringing together 9 sovereign nations, Fiji, Kiribati, Nauru, Samoa, Tonga, Tuvalu, and the Marshall Islands, the Federated States of Micronesia, and Palau, to combat China's expanding influence. The drawdown of USAID personnel and the foreign assistance freeze has now given Beijing a free hand to operate in this crucial region. China has been significantly escalating its commercial and development activities for years, putting itself in a position to capitalize on any vacuum the United States leaves behind. To pick just one more example, over 40 Chinese state-owned enterprises currently operate in the country of Papua New Guinea, with more than 1,800 foreign companies controlled by Chinese nationals or entities, as the U.S. draws down its presence in the region. This is not just a competition in the Pacific. China's ambitions are global, as their Belt and Road Initiative demonstrates, and they are making significant headway in Africa. While African leaders and citizens still prefer engagement with the United States over China, recent gaps in American engagement are leading even American allies to reassess their partnerships with us. After USAID was withdrawn to Mozambique, China quickly offered to build a surgical center at Maputo Central Hospital, the largest health unit in the country, and a highway in the capital region. Compare the Trump administration's about-face on international development partnerships with China's 2024 announcement of $51 billion in new foreign aid to Africa, targeting infrastructure projects and massive job creation. Who appears to be the more stable, more productive partner now? And while the effects of losing these programs may be felt first abroad, the losses are ultimately felt at home. American-based organizations and companies will lose nearly $30 billion due to foreign aid cuts and canceled international assistance contracts, such as Celine LLC, an information technology company that lost over $100 million in contracts from USAID, and nearly 20,000 jobs have already been lost. The American people deserve to know what they are losing. They deserve to know how completely the Trump administration is paving the way for China's rise to global dominance. That is what this amendment would give them. Proud to propose the amendment, and I urge my colleagues to support it as well. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank the gentlelady. The gentleman from Florida, Mr. Diaz-Balart, is recognized to respond to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in opposition to the amendment by the distinguished ranking member. First of all, I want to reiterate that a key priority in this bill is providing the funding and the related directives necessary to counter the malign influence of the People's Republic of China and the Chinese Communist Party. Our memories sometimes here can be short, but I recall during the debate in fiscal year 24 that the ranking member actually criticized these same counter-China provisions for allegedly somehow jeopardizing the United States' national security. I have here the press release criticizing the prohibition of funds for the Wuhan Institute of Virology, for gain-of-function research, and any lab controlled by China, Russia, Cuba, Iran, North Korea, and Venezuela. We were also criticized then in writing because we prohibited funding for the government of the People's Republic of China or the Chinese Communist Party. And yes, and for preventing lending through the international financial institutions to the People's Republic of China. Now, I'm grateful and I'm glad that it looks like that attitude might be changing. Because now I hear concern that we may not be doing enough to confront the PRC, despite being criticized for doing too much. In fact, despite the top-line cuts, the bill designates $1.8 billion in support for the Indo-Pacific strategy. It prohibits funding to the PRC or the CCP. It provides funds to support critical allies and partners like the Philippines and Taiwan. It supports funding above the request for the Pacific Island countries and includes support necessary for the United States to compete with the PRC in Southeast Asia and Western Hemisphere and elsewhere as required by our national interests. More broadly, in my judgment, Secretary Rubio's realignment of the United States foreign assistance with our national security interests was long overdue. Again, it's worth repeating that the previous administration was funding controversial, wasteful programs, and even programs that were harmful to U.S. national security interests. And I put provisions in this bill, we put provisions in this bill to address these disgraceful activities and to try to reassure taxpayers that their money would be spent to defend our national security interests. Will there be hiccups and vigorous debate in the process of realigning and streamlining our foreign assistance? Absolutely. But change had to happen. And I'm going to work with each and every one of you and every member of this committee to help ensure that the United States foreign assistance programs enhance American security, expand economic opportunities that benefit American workers, strengthen allies, and confront the malign, dangerous influence of the PRC and other strategic competitors. So therefore, I urge my colleagues to oppose this amendment. Mr. Chairman, thank you, and I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. The gentlelady from Florida is recognized to address the amendment.
I don't know whether we're agreeing to disagree or we're disagreeing to agree, because I think everybody in this room understands that we do not want China to take over the world and take over the voids that we are leaving. So I'm rising in strong support of Ranking Member DeLaura's amendment, which calls for a much-needed report from the Secretary of State on how recent changes to U.S. foreign policy are opening the door for China to expand its global influence at the direct expense of American interests. Now, and after I've been listening to all this, I now understand why my 6-year-old grandson is actually learning Mandarin in first grade. And let's be blunt, when the United States retreats from the world stage, we create a vacuum, and that's what we've been doing since Mr. Trump came back into office. And the People's Republic of China is more than eager to fill it. They're not just filling gaps, they're executing a calculated long-term strategy to replace U.S. leadership with an authoritarian model, and they're doing it on every front: economic, political, diplomatic, technological, and military. And I'm going to break it down economically. Through its Belt and Road Initiative, China has spent over $1 trillion funding infrastructure, roads, ports, railways, power plants in more than 140 countries. These projects come with opaque terms, and when nations can't repay, China demands strategic concessions like long-term port leases or control of natural resources. That's debt-trapped diplomacy, plain and simple. Politically, China is buying influence at the United Nations, building voting blocks that align with its views on Taiwan and Hong Kong and human rights. And on the information front, As the voice of America goes dark in places like Myanmar, Vietnam, and now even Ukraine, China is flooding the airwaves with state-run media, adding over 80 new frequencies in just the past few months. Their message, autocracy works. Technologically, China offers cheap 5G infrastructure, embedding surveillance and cyber vulnerabilities in our allied nations. And via the digital Silk Road, they export facial recognition, AI surveillance, and censorship tools to fragile democracies. They also dominate the supply chain for rare earth minerals, which are essential for everything from smartphones to military equipment to renewable energy, and militarily China expanding its footprint all over the place. And in terms of global health, they distributed vaccines and supplies around the world, not always safe or effectively, but strategically to win loyalty. And now, as the United States slashes programs, China is stepping in with alternatives that are opaque, that are authoritarian aligned, and dismissive of human rights and civil society, and the very pillars of our model of development. This is not about development assistance. This is a high-stakes contest between democracy and autocracy, between openness and coercion, between partnership and control. And I'm going to give you, if I have time, one example. In Cambodia, the United States recently canceled 2 foreign aid programs, one focused on child literacy, the other on nutrition, and within days, China's aid agency announced it would fund nearly the identical projects. That's not generosity, that is strategic replacement. And when we pull back our support for institutions like the World Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, the International Fund for Agriculture Development, China is increasing its stakes, steering development to serve its own political and economic agenda. And it is critical, that the United States stay at the table with our resources, our values, and our leadership to influence critical decisions like where resources should go. Because when we're not at the table, China is. And this amendment demands a clear-eyed assessment. We cannot fix what we refuse to face, and if we don't act now, we're ceding generations, ground for generations. I guess my grandson is going to need to know that Mandarin language, but I hope it's for better purposes. And let's do our job. Let's shine the light. And I urge my colleagues to support this amendment.
Thank the gentlelady. The gentleman from Hawaii, Mr. Case, is recognized to address the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in strong support of the ranking member's amendment. You know, we're all fond of catchy names for our bills, and I believe that despite the chair's impassioned defense of his measure, and with some laudable exceptions, which the chair outlined and for which he deserves credit, this bill is on track to be named the Gift to the Chinese Communist Party Act, because that is certainly how the CCP views this version of the bill. And let's just focus on some specific areas as microcosms of where this bill fails are national security. Yes, this is a national security bill. In my part of the world, the Indo-Pacific, and more specifically, the Pacific Islands, where the PRC seeks to split our alliances, partnerships, and friendships, to cast our country as the most unreliable of partners, and to figuratively and literally outflank our national security. Let's take some examples. Pacific Island leaders themselves cite climate change and the results of climate change as their top threat. We can argue all we want about it. That's what they think their top threat is. And under this and other measures, anything that even recognizes climate-related challenges is verboten. Well, the PRC just announced an expansion of assistance with mitigating climate change to the Pacific Islands. Pacific Island leaders cite digital connectivity, so internet access, cybersecurity, things we take for granted, as one of their top economic challenges. But this administration and this bill halt USAID funding of submarine cable projects and other connectivity efforts. Well, the PRC is stepping up its Huawei and fiber optic and other interconnectivity offerings. USAID offered Pacific Island nations critical assistance in disaster preparedness, another key challenge, especially in low-lying countries. But that assistance has been halted. Well, the PRC just established the China Pacific Island Countries Center for Disaster Risk Reduction and Cooperation and funded it. USAID offered the Pacific Island nations small local development assistance, which is what they need. Another Pacific Islands priority. That has been halted. But the PRC just announced 200 small and beautiful economic development efforts throughout the Pacific Islands. In fact, in a whole range of other Pacific Island priorities, humanitarian assistance, good government, biodiversity conservation, HIV/AIDS, electrification, infrastructure, the U.S. is stepping out and the PRC is stepping in. And this is all before we confront the real-world results of one of this administration's and majority's great vendettas, because it cannot be now characterized as anything else than that against the United Nations. With so many programs critical to the Pacific Islands, but let's just take one, UNESCO, which promotes international cooperation in education, science, culture, and communications worldwide. When the first Trump administration pulled out of UNESCO, as it appears poised to do again, the PRC was left to run UNESCO and the show, to dictate to the Pacific Islands and to the world what the norms of education, culture, science, and cultural interchange would be. And that is not a show that the Pacific Islands nor any other nations can sustain. In fact, if you take a look at the Indo-Pacific and the Pacific Islands overall, and even worldwide, it is actually the ultimate irony and tragedy that we built the United Nations to counter countries like the PRC, and now we're abandoning it in this bill and otherwise to countries like the PRC. The bottom line is very clear and stark, whether you want to take the Pacific Islands or anywhere else. As we walk out, the PRC walks in. And that is not a result any subcommittee that renamed itself the National Security Subcommittee should sanction. But let's not debate this endlessly or deny that. Let's systematically evaluate it across the board, because that's what this amendment asks us to do. It asks the Secretary of State to report back to this committee what the results of the administration's policies and priorities are on the advancement of the PRC's interests in the world. Pretty straightforward, part of our oversight. And unless you are afraid of the answer to that, or unless you believe that the Secretary of State is not omnipotent in that department, we should have that report. I urge adoption of the amendment.
Thank the gentleman. The gentlelady from Ohio, Ms. Capter, is recognized to address the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank Congresswoman DeLauro, our ranking member, for offering this amendment, whose purpose is to take 180 days to have the administration take a look at tracking Chinese efforts to expand its global influence on every level, politically, technologically, economically, and militarily. I think 180 days is a reasonable amount of time for the administration to report back to us. That's all we're asking for. And it's clear what Communist China is doing in the developing world and the developed world already. She's expanding their Belt and Road Initiative. And isn't that an interesting phrase? Belt and road. Think about it. And it's stadium diplomacy. They're investing untold tens of billions of dollars because the Chinese economy essentially makes more than the world needs and then strategically dumps, whether it's steel, whether it's automotive, I mean, you take it, whether it's critical minerals, and they begin to gain greater and greater control. Their interest is not being done out of the goodness of their heart, but they obviously have strategic interests in this hemisphere, but also in Asia, Africa, Latin America, and they're voting with some of the worst tyrannies in the world. So they seek to increase their influence so that foreign nations are more inclined to support them, whether that impacts us in terms of trade disputes. Look at the trouble the president's having with them right now. Access to critical minerals, very important. Access to space. Even deep sea mining or big balloons that fly over our country. We have to recognize we're living in a different moment. We've also seen this whole Chinese initiative play out at the United Nations and in other forums where they never vote on liberty's side. Freedom is not something on their mind. China's economy is growing, and they have a vast population, 4 times larger or more than our own. And their technological lead is breathtaking. One of the most recent cars they've actually manufactured will go 1,900 miles with a battery that you can recharge in 5 minutes. Believe me, in my part of America where we manufacture, we hear that loud and clearly. They also have a real edge in artificial intelligence. I mentioned critical minerals, and also telecommunications. Our country must maintain its global leadership in every form of diplomacy we can muster for liberty's sake, not for our own sake, but for the sake of the society in which we live. And we can use humanitarian and development assistance as a tool to advance our national security and our interests against China and other tyrannies. We need to be serious about that, to continue to advance liberty's cause in our foreign relations and our national security interests around the globe. I think a 180-day study is extremely reasonable, and I would think that the new Secretary of State would want to do that. We would welcome the administration's perspective on China and its activities globally. I ask for support of the amendment and congratulate the gentlelady for offering it. I yield back.
Thank the gentlelady. Are there other members wishing to address the amendment? Seeing none, the gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute to close.
I want to thank my colleagues for speaking up. And at the core of this is, what are we afraid of? What are you afraid of with regard to a report? And a report that just tells us where we are, where we have some difficulty. If you just put up the map and see where we were and now where we're not and who is there, vacuums get filled, and that is what China is doing. And the American people are demanding help with cost of living. It's an issue we hear about all over and over again. But you have an administration with a war on food, on education, on health around the world, and with major economic impacts at home. And we have given China more and more opportunities to replace us. And we need to ensure the benefits from future trade and economic investment. We're allowing it to flow to Beijing instead of to the United States. And wouldn't it be a very good idea for us to know where we might be able to move in a direction or step back, or we're all right here, we're not all right there? What is wrong with a report? There's a fear factor here which is unexplainable. If we do not understand the extent of the damage that President Trump has done to America's global influence, we cannot hope to restore it. Again, I thank my colleagues. You've laid out the details of this amendment and wanting to have information. You can't close your eyes, put your head in the sand, and say it's going to be all right. I urge support for the amendment, and I yield back.
Thank the gentlelady. The question is now on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from Connecticut. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. No. The opinion of the chair, the noes have it. A roll call has been requested. Sufficient number of hands having been raised, the roll will be called. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Adderholt. Mr. Adderholt, no. Mr. Aguilar. Aye. Mr. Aguilar, aye. Mr. Alford. Mr. Alford, no. Mr. Amodei. Mr. Amodei, no. Mrs. Bice. Mrs. Bice, no. Mr. Bishop. Mr. Bishop, aye. Mr. Calvert. Mr. Calvert, no. Mr. Carter. Mr. Carter, no. Mr. Case. Mr. Case, aye. Mr. Siscamani. Mr. Klein. Mr. Klein? No. Mr. Cloud? Mr. Cloud? No. Mr. Clyburn? Mr. Clyburn? Aye. Mr. Clyde? Mr. Clyde? No. Mr. Cole? Mr. Cole? No. Mr. Cuellar? Mr. Cuellar? Aye. Ms. Dean? Mr. Loro?
Aye.
Mr. Loro? Aye. Mr. Diaz-Balart? Mr. Diaz-Balart? No. Mr. Edwards? Mr. Elzey? Mr. Elzey? No. Ms. Escobar? Ms. Escobar? Aye. Mr. Espaillat? Mr. Espaillat? Aye. Mr. Fleischman? Ms. Frankel?
Aye.
Ms. Frankel? Aye. Mr. Franklin? Mr. Franklin? No. Mr. Gonzalez? Mr. Guest? Mr. Guest? No. Mr. Harder? Mr. Harder? Aye. Dr. Harris? Dr. Harris? No. Mrs. Hinson? Mrs. Hinson? No. Mr. Hoyer?
Aye.
Mr. Hoyer? Aye. Mr. Ivy? Mr. Ivy? Aye. Mr. Joyce? Mr. Joyce? No. Ms. Capter? Ms. Capter? Aye. Mr. Lalota? Mr. Lalota? No. Ms. Lee? Ms. Letlow? Mr. Levin? Mr. Levin? Aye. Ms. Malloy? Ms. Malloy? No. Ms. McCullum? Ms. McCullum? Aye. Ms. Ming? Ms. Ming? Aye. Mr. Molinar? Mr. Molinar? No. Mr. Moore? Mr. Moore? No. Mr. Morelli? Mr. Morelli? Aye. Mr. Mervan? Mr. Mervan? Aye. Mr. Newhouse? Mr. Newhouse? No. Ms. Perez? Ms. Perez? Aye. Ms. Pingree? Ms. Pingree? Aye. Mr. Pocan? Mr. Pocan? Aye. Mr. Quigley? Mr. Quigley? Aye. Mr. Reschenthaler? Mr. Rogers? Mr. Rogers? No. Mr. Rutherford? Mr. Rutherford? No. Mr. Simpson? Mr. Simpson? No. Mr. Strong? Mr. Strong? No. Mrs. Torres? Mrs. Torres? Aye. Ms. Underwood? Ms. Underwood? Aye. Mr. Valadeo? Mr. Valadeo? No. Ms. Wasserman Schultz? Ms. Wasserman Schultz? Aye. Mrs. Watson Coleman? Mrs. Watson Coleman? Aye. Mr. Womack? Mr. Womack? No. Mr. Zinke? Mr. Zinke? No.
Does any member wish to record their vote or change their vote? Gentleman from Tennessee.
Mr. Fleischman? No.
Gentleman from Arizona.
Mr. Siscomani? No.
Gentleman from North Carolina.
Mr. Edwards? No.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Mr. Reschenthaler? No.
Gentlelady from Nevada.
Ms. Lee? Aye.
Gentlelady from Pennsylvania.
Ms. Dean? Aye.
Are there any others wishing to change or record your vote? Seeing none, the clerk will tally. Gentleman from Texas, how's the gentleman recorded? Thank the gentleman.
Mr. Gonzalez votes no.
Are there others who have not recorded their votes or wish to change? No, go ahead. On this vote, the ayes are 28, the noes are 34. The amendment is not adopted. Gentlelady from Connecticut, Mr. Lewis, recognized for an amendment.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk, and I ask unanimous consent that
Without
the
ob-
read.
Without objection, the reading of the amendment is dispensed with, and the gentlelady is recognized for remarks on her amendment.
This amendment restores funding to the International Humanitarian Assistance Account, which is a vital tool of American soft power and a life-saving source of humanitarian aid for people around the world. The bill before us is already cut by 22%, and this program has been cut nearly in half by 42%. American global leadership is indispensable for addressing the numerous humanitarian crises around the world. From Haiti, where nearly 5.4 million people are struggling to feed themselves and their families every day, to Sudan, where nearly 2 million children face malnutrition due to the ongoing civil war, with famines declared in some refugee camps already. In Ethiopia, 40% of population is suffering from extreme lack of food. In Myanmar, nearly 1 million Rohingya people have been displaced due to ethnic violence. In Yemen, more than 4.5 million people have been displaced, and nearly 18 million are in dire need of assistance. An ongoing Russian invasion of Ukraine has displaced 7 million people into neighboring countries. And throughout Central America, over 1 million people have been uprooted from their homes due to criminal organizations and political instability. And the crisis in Gaza grows worse by the day, with attacks continuing on tent camps, hospitals, churches, and aid trucks and nearly the entire population of Gaza. More than 2 million men, women, and children are starving, and the entire population has been squeezed into barely 14% of the geographic areas, resulting in overcrowding and unsanitary conditions. Yet, instead of allowing experienced international aid organizations and NGOs to continue safely and reliably providing aid to all parts of Gaza facing famine, the Israeli government and the Trump administration have devised a new aid distribution system that is wholly inadequate to deliver any meaningful food assistance and completely ignores the other urgent needs of the population of Gaza: fuel, water, sanitation, shelter, and health care. Last Wednesday, at least 20 Palestinians died in a stampede for aid at a distribution site. This weekend, at least 32 Palestinians seeking aid at another site were killed by Israeli troops, whom witnesses reported fired indiscriminately into the crowd. Palestinian woman who was at the site following the incident asked a reporter, and I quote, "Is this food or death?" The total number of trucks available to bring food into Gaza has been limited to under 100 per day, when more than 500 are needed. We desperately need to find a way to get assistance to Gaza, not just food, but fuel, medical supplies, shelter, clean water. The global community has failed Gaza. People are being forced to put their lives on the line for a box of provisions, risk dying in line, or risk dying without food. Those are the choices being forced on the people of Gaza. I've been a leading voice in calling for surging humanitarian assistance into Gaza since the early days of this conflict, calling for at least 500 trucks per day of humanitarian aid since February of last year. When people are desperate, starving, and do not know where they can find food, find a meal, that's a recipe for further instability and violence. And by aiding the ongoing dismantling of UNRWA, the only international agency that is dedicated and capable of carrying out major humanitarian aid distribution inside Gaza, this bill is making it all impossible for any ceasefire to last more than a few weeks. Without reliable, safe, and trusted systems to distribute humanitarian aid and rebuild Gaza, there will be no hope for long-term peace. We do not just have a moral obligation to act in these circumstances. We have an imperative to preserve regional stability and prevent these conflicts from growing. My amendment restores the funding to an account that has helped save millions of lives, an account this bill cuts by 42%, and that is only the beginning of what this committee should be prepared to do to address the many dire humanitarian crises around the world. I'm proud to propose this amendment, and I urge my colleagues to support it as well. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, gentlelady. Gentleman from Florida, Mr. Diaz-Balart, is recognized to address the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I rise in opposition to the amendment from the distinguished ranking member of our full committee. The amendment would increase the appropriation for the International Humanitarian Assistance account from $5 billion in the underlying bill to $8.707 billion. Here's one big problem. It has no offset. The amendment has no offset and would put the bill well over our 302B allocation, which in essence would just kill the bill. I've heard other folks out there, not appropriators, talk about how maybe a continuing resolution is a good idea, but they're horrific for our country, for our committee. They would not fulfill, CRs would not fulfill our national security commitment to our allies and friends while putting America's interests first, and again, while protecting U.S. taxpayers. And again, so this has no offset. We know that what that would mean, so I respectfully urge a no vote on the amendment, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank the gentleman. The gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Frankel, is recognized to address the amendment.
Thank you. I rise in support. And Representative DeLauro just articulated, did an excellent job in terms of the need. There's no question about that. I just want to remind everybody that when we provide food and medicine and education and safety from sexual violence, domestic abuse to people in impoverished countries or communities, that means for them less migration, less conflict there, and more stable and healthy lives. And what does that mean for us? That means more markets for American goods, protection from pandemics, and less troops in harm's way. A very good reason to support this very good amendment. And I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady. Are there other members wishing to address the amendment? Seeing none, oh, I'm sorry, gentlelady from New Jersey is recognized.
Recognize me, and thank you, Congresswoman DeLauro, for this excellent amendment. Thank you for the humanitarian you always display in your service to our country and to your constituents. Both my ranking member and the Congresswoman articulated the need for this aid. I simply want to say that we were once one of the most beloved countries in the world because people could count on us to stick up for them and to provide for them whatever it was needed to keep them healthy and safe. And now we have departed so far from that, and we're continuing to move in that direction. And my friends on the other side of the aisle, whenever one of us raises spending money in one way, says, well, it's outside of the 302Bs. Well, it shouldn't have been outside the 302Bs. It should have been fundamentally part of what we move forward with in the original bill. Where we stand in relationship to others' needs speaks volumes about who we are, what we are, and we're much better than we're displaying ourselves to be in this bill, in this moment, and in opposition to this amendment. I most assuredly support it, and I pray that the God in you will help you to understand how important it is to stand up for those whose needs are so desperate that what we do for them could mean life or death for the innocent. Thank you. I yield back.
I thank gentlelady. Are there other members wishing to address the amendment? The gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we pass this amendment, we will add $3.7 billion, and I mean billion dollars, to the spending of Congress. That's approximately $12 for every man, woman, and child in the entire United States. I think we can keep our $12. But this is a perfect example of Congress's massive addiction to opium. That's right. That's what I said. OPM, other people's money. We have an addiction to other people's money. Would we take that money out of our own pocket? Nope, I don't think so. But really, it's not other people's money. It's our people's money. It's our taxpayers' money. So I rise in strong opposition to this amendment, and I return.
Thank the gentleman. Are there other members wishing to address the amendment? Gentleman from Maryland is recognized to address the amendment.
You voted for, I think, I'm checking it, but the overwhelming majority, enough to pass it, voted for a $5 trillion increase in the national debt. So don't lecture us about $3.5 billion to feed, clothe, house people who are in desperate straits. With all due respect.
Simple, straightforward.
Gentleman from Maryland is recognized to address the amendment.
I'll be brief. I won't associate my remarks with the remarks of the gentleman from Georgia. I go home to my district, and I have yet to someone come up to me and say, I want you to spend my $12 sending money to Yemen. My constituents aren't from Yemen. They're not from Sudan. They're not from Gaza. They're from the beautiful eastern shore of Maryland. And people look at our budget and our spending, and they don't want their money spent in that way. Now, they may be making the wrong decision, but we're supposed to represent our constituents. And our constituents send a clear signal that we have to control the federal government spending and that we should spend money not in Yemen, not in Sudan, not in Gaza, but we should spend it here in the country. So the gentleman from Georgia is absolutely right. We have a spending addiction. We have it. And the sooner we realize it, the sooner we will correct it. But to borrow money from our grandchildren and great-grandchildren to assuage our conscience in some way that we have to feed and clothe the entire world is not only unrealistic, I suggest it's an immoral treatment to future generations. I yield back. No, sir.
Gentleman has already yielded back, actually. Gentleman from New York, Mr. Espion, is recognized to address the amendment.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We are the United States of America, the greatest country in the world. The rest of the world looks at us as a beacon of hope and opportunity. And we often pound our chests and say that we are even greater than that. But the fact of the matter is that only less than 1% of our budget goes to foreign aid. Less than 1% of our budget goes to feed hungry kids, to help destitute people across the world that look up to us as a beacon of hope and opportunity. And we pound our chests and want to say that we're even greater than that. Yet, we're able to engage in fiscal practices that put us at a $3 trillion deficit over a period of time and extend an unprecedented handsome tax cut to the very rich, the ones that throw away food, and disregard the need of hungry people, not just in other countries, but in our country as well. And so here we have folks talking about less than 1% of the budget and how we are irresponsible in our budgetary practices, when all we want to do is say to the rest of the world, you know, we are a great nation. You should all aspire to be like the United States of America. And part of the mystique of America is to lift those that are coming behind us, the neediest among us. That's part of the mystique of America. And that's why people all over the world want to come to America. Because we have a willingness to help the neediest among us, not to be arrogant and bullish and say that we should not spend to help hungry kids when we really only spend 0.5% of our budget. Those are crumbs. We should be doing better. And that's why China is eating our lunch. Not just because they're engaged in predatory practices by giving money to other countries, not just because they may be behind fentanyl or other illegal things, but because they go and they invest in other countries. and they're eating our lunch. And people here whine and complain, Mr. Chairman. Oh, please, grow up. I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. The gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Quigley, is recognized to address the amendment.
I at least have to talk about this one time. I've told the story about Upton Sinclair when he wrote The Jungle, was dismayed at America's reaction afterwards. He was talking about the inhumane treatment of workers. But as Teddy Roosevelt read the book, he said, "I've been poisoned." Sinclair said, "I aim for America's heart. I hit a little lower." So if we can't appeal to someone's heart in these matters, we can maybe appeal to their brain and common sense, because it was that shrinking violet, that left-wing radical, General Mattis, who said, if you cut foreign aid, you better buy me more bullets. It is the common sense of recognizing the essence of soft power and what it means. You got to have friends in this world. If we don't have those who are going to stand with us, we're going to be in trouble when the chips are down. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. The gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Ivey, is recognized to address the amendment.
I yield to my colleague from Maryland.
For yielding. You know, I tell people that I believe strongly in the separation of church and state. What I don't believe in is the separation of the values that my faith teaches me and the policies I pursue. My Bible does not tell me that I should be my brother's keeper on the Eastern Shore, or my brother's keeper in St. Mary's County where I live, or my brother's keeper in Maryland, or my brother's keeper in America. Tells me I should be my brother's keeper. And we talk about a spending problem. When you talk about a spending problem, it relates to a debt problem that you're talking about. If you pay your bills, you don't have debt. I believe that personally. I don't have any debt. I pay every bill I get within the month. And luckily, I'm old enough that I've paid off my house. And as a result of my paying my bills every month, I don't have any debts. And do we spend beyond our means? We do. Do both sides do it? Absolutely. You think if you spend $150 billion additional on defense this year, that doesn't cause a deficit. That's absurd. And you don't pay for it. Now, let me give you a perfect example. I came here in 1981. Ronald Reagan was elected president the same year he took office the same year I was elected. The debt increased with every spending being signed by Ronald Reagan from $985 billion to $1.8 trillion. Hear me. That's more than the debt has been increased at any time since I've been here. Now, there were smaller numbers, but as a percentage of our GDP, that was the largest increase ever, except in World War II. So we ought to stop preaching about one another's spending and tax cutting. And we ought to spend more time talking about paying for things, what value we give to things that we ought to pay for. Now, as some of you know, I'm a big supporter of national security. I have been every day I've been in the Congress of the United States. I supported a lot of what Ronald Reagan did, which Carter began, by the way. So when you talk about debt and you want to spend $3.4 trillion on a tax cut, we don't have $4.4 trillion to cut somebody's taxes. and then stay even? We don't have that. There's nobody in this room that's rational that believes you can cut $3.4 trillion in spending this year to account for the tax cut or over the 10 years. So let's understand, we have a debt because we don't pay our bills. And both sides do it. We may do it for different reasons, but we do it. So on this particular issue, yes, I believe I'm my brother's keeper, wherever that brother or sister might live. Thank you.
Thank both the gentlemen. Gentlelady from Pennsylvania, Ms. Dean's recognized to address the amendment.
Thank you very much. I rise in support of the DeLauro amendment, and I thank the ranking member for bringing it forward and bringing forward the issue of humanitarian assistance. And Judge Carter, I was really moved by what you had to say, the history of your wife's family in the Netherlands following World War II and the hunger that I'm sure she remembers to this day. And the common sense thing that you say about expiration dates of nutritional biscuits. That's a worthy conversation. We're the greatest nation on the planet. Why didn't we have that conversation before destroying something that was simply marked expired? I'm certain your family's experience, your wife's family's experience would have said, I'll eat it any day of the week. I'll take the risk. But we didn't have that conversation because we had an administration that just cut it off, put it in a warehouse, don't access it, not to mention let go of most of the folks who would have been able to do the distribution of it, told them to stop. That's not what we do anymore. And then without a single conversation, just destroyed it. The greatest nation destroyed, you talk about waste, destroyed millions of dollars worth of life-saving aid. So I think you ask a very important question. I want to go back to the other piece of this, though, however, on humanitarian aid, whether we're talking about Gaza or other places in the world, South Sudan and other places. I think there is some misconception that just get some food there and everything's going to be all right. Well, we got the first layer of the food's not going there. We have trucks lined up outside of Gaza, hundreds and hundreds of trucks for weeks on end not getting in. They're getting in now, possibly at a point of 100 trucks a day. I don't even think that can be confirmed. And then what happens as a result, once they do get in under Israeli control, becomes a bit of a black hole. Whereas others who have been there doing this support for a very long time and who have the relationships, the partnerships on the ground, are waiting for these trucks. That is UNRWA. There are thousands of folks who have worked for UNRWA very honorably. And I am in favor of making sure that it is not Hamas infiltrated. But World Food Program, I've met directly with Cindy McCain, who heroically heads the World Food Program and is on the ground there doing what they can. It was their trucks when the folks came to try to receive aid. It was their trucks over the weekend where these people, desperate people, were shot. We have so many folks there. But finally, to the point of, let's just get them food. That misses the point. So many of the people who are at this level of malnutrition cannot accept food. It will not help them. They have to have medical support for the nutritional paste and other nutrients to bring them back from this desperate level of starvation. So it's not like just get them some cookies, get them a bucket of fruit. It isn't that. It's so much more desperate than that. I met with a team of pediatricians who worked in Gaza and in other places around the world, and they begged me to tell that story. It is not as simple as get the food in. And by the way, I wish we had the will here to get that first layer, which is let's get some food in there. It is different. It is deep. It is a difficult set of circumstances when people, particularly children, are starving to death. You need skilled pediatricians. You need nutritionists. You need other specialists to address acute malnutrition. I hope we will pay attention to what the ranking member has done here with this amendment. I hope we will call upon our better angels and say that of course this is worthy of our spending. Of course this is our role around the planet. Whether you are a person of faith or not, we have an important role to play. And the financial argument makes no sense, and my constituents know that. And I yield back.
Thank you, gentlelady. Are there other members wishing to address the amendment? Gentlelady from Ohio is recognized to address it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to send a friendly message to my dear friend, Congressman Harris from Maryland. I'm going to share a chart with him because I know he cares about the U.S. debt as much as I do. And there's no question that since the 1980s, there's only one president who ever sent a balanced budget for Congress to consider, and that was Bill Clinton at the end of the 1980s. But if one looks at where the U.S. debt has come from, it is abundantly clear that those at the very top of the income scale, earning millions of dollars a year and indeed billions of dollars a year, do not pay their fair share. They do not. And so if one looks back at several Republican administrations, you will see tax breaks. The latest bill that was just passed will give to those who have so much $340,000 annually, permanently going forward, that will add to the U.S. debt. The Wall Street Journal agrees with that. Every major economist agrees with that. Those who earn under $50,000 a year, and I represent many of those folks, they will, several of them, hundreds and hundreds, will lose Medicaid coverage, and the cost of everything going up means that they're going to end up net negative. But the folks at the top will not. Most of the debt is due to tax breaks to the wealthiest people in our country, and you can guess which political party was in charge of the administrations that did that. In addition, the costs of wars that were not paid. And again, if one looks at who declared those wars, it's abundantly clear. About 25% of the debt is that. And then there was the pandemic, and that added a couple trillion more. But if one really looks at where the debt came from, it's very clear. And I will say to my friends on the other side of the aisle, it was interesting to me, because I believe in paying taxes. I believe every American should pay taxes. If you're at the bottom of the income scale, $1. Nobody should be free from patriotism to this country. But we took that away several years ago. I didn't agree with it, but it happened. And there's a reason, accountants don't like to deal with $1 bills, but there was a message that went with it. And that's that we're all in this together. We're all in this together. And I really would ask my colleagues, I'll give you the numbers. We'll bring them over. We'll show you them on a chart. How do we dig ourselves out of this hole? How do we do this? We have to have economic growth here at home. We have to reshore jobs. I agree with the president on that. We got a long way to go to make that successful. But it was your party that when we tried to get 20,000 additional accountants at the IRS in order to go after the people that have the most complex returns in the country, you repeatedly turned that proposal down in this committee over and over and over again. I come from a family where we had a little store, and when Dad earned his first dollar bill, he framed it and we put it on the wall. He understood what it was to compete, and it was hard. It was hard for a family grocery to do that. But he respected the bottom line, and I just say to my friends, including the gentleman who I'm responding to, we can solve this, but not with that kind of intransigence. We have to be able to put a group of people together who respect the bottom line and who know what's fair to all of the American people, not just the elite privileged few. I thank you for listening, and I yield back.
Very good, Marcy. You gave me a good lesson.
Thank the gentlelady. Are there other members wishing to address the amendment? If there's no further debate, then the gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute to close.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. You know, the United States has a history of providing assistance and expert assistance in times of disasters. That's U.S. history. That's where our values lie. Times of disaster and times of famine. And that is because when you provide humanitarian assistance, it is one of the most, it's one of the most effective investments that we can make. It's one of those, and the issue is here, we do what we have done in the past because we have a moral compass. We have a moral compass that says people are starving. People are in the wake of a hurricane, a tsunami, of whatever it is. And the U.S. has been first in line, except for now, when we do not want to participate. How do we stand by and watch people starve? I think what's important in this debate and what's here today is to finding where our moral compass is. And if we can't vote for humanitarian assistance to people, humanitarian assistance to people, then we have lost it as a nation. And my God, what a disaster that would be for the United States of America. I yield back.
Thank the gentlelady. The question is now on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from Connecticut. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
No, let it go. Let it go.
And the amendment is
Let it go.
not accepted. I believe that the bell has rung, but the gentleman from Texas is next. He's usually pretty fast. And so what we'll do is go to the gentleman from Texas to offer his amendment. And then at that point, when we're finished disposing with that, I'll recess this. As soon as the votes are over, I would ask that you come back. We'll get started as quickly as we can. We still have a long way to go. My friend, gentleman from Texas is recognized for an amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment at the desk and ask that we dispense with the reading.
Without objection, the reading of the amendment is dispensed with, and the gentleman's recognized for remarks on his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To our chairman, as you know, if you recall, last year, if you remembered, last year you don't remember, but as you remember, we talked about this particular amendment or something similar. Both you and I worked at the state level where the state of Florida, the state of Texas worked on similar type of language. That is one part dealing with performance measures. So if we spend $1, we know that we spend $1 on it. Talked about getting rid of any unnecessary rules and regulations that were duplicative or were unnecessary and therefore saving us money. If you recall, Mr. Chairman, we also talked about having reviews of different programs. And if you recall also, Mr. Chairman, that we also talked about the performance measures. The performance measures, as you know, under the law that we passed in 2010, the agencies are doing their own performance measures and they put them somewhere in a website. But none of that work product is ever provided to the Appropriations Committee. If we are going to be doing our work under the Constitution and provide oversight, we have to see those measures. We have to see some of those suggestions. So I would ask that that we sit down as the year goes on, and I've asked every chairman, and I withdrew this for us to consider this because, again, this language is very straightforward. It follows the law that we passed in 2010. And it just calls for performance measures, reviews of rules and regulations, find cost savings, and to be provided to the Appropriations Committee where we will have the final say-so. So at this time, if I can just have a conversation with the chairman, if you recall our conversation very vividly, We had talked about doing this, and I would love to work with you and the ranking member and the committee staff on this language.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Cuellar. Look, you never let us forget this issue, and I thank you for it. And I know you've been a leader on this issue. By the way, you were in the state. You continue to be there. I look forward to working with you on this. I think it's an important matter. It's accountability. It's making sure the money is well spent. So not only do I commit to doing it, I look forward to working with you. And again, thank you for your long memory and making sure that we do not forget this very important issue. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you. The chair, was actually an error. That was a 15-minute bell we heard, so we actually have a little extra time, and I understand the, gentleman is recognized for 1 minute to close. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I look forward to working with you and the other members and the ranking and the staff also. And with that, I will withdraw my amendment. Thank you so much. Thank you, gentlemen.
I thank the gentleman, and as I was suggesting, we have a little more time, so we're going to keep moving while we can. Gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Quigley, is recognized for an amendment.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I have an amendment at the desk and I ask unanimous consent to dispense.
Without
with reading.
objection, the reading of the amendment is dispensed with, and the gentleman is recognized for remarks on his amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I too plan to offer and withdraw an amendment. This would fund the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development at the President's request of $87.5 million. I understand there is a language in the report that acknowledges that the committee, quote, looks forward to working with authorizers on the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development's capital increase. But I want to highlight the critical role the EBRD plays in the global economic sector. As a multilateral development bank owned by 75 countries, EBRD promotes private sector-driven economic growth in countries that are often trying to reduce their dependence on Russia and China. The bank has also supported the international expansion of many U.S. companies. The U.S. currently holds a 10% stake in the bank, but if the U.S. fails to participate in the capital increase, that would open the door for other countries, such as China, to increase their shares and expand their influence in the institution. The capital increase the U.S. provides will enhance EBRD's capacity, allowing it to expand its role as the largest international investor in Ukraine's economy, with a particular focus on its reconstruction. The EBRD is the most efficient way to burden share investment in the bank's reconstruction efforts in Ukraine. For every dollar the U.S. invests, other shareholders invest an additional $9. The bank has also been critical in reducing dependence on Russian gas in the wake of Putin's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. While this Congress and European leaders debate the legal and political path forward towards transferring frozen Russian sovereign assets to Ukraine, EBRD provides an immediate and practical pathway to deliver financial support once the Repo for Ukrainians Act, which authorized the seizure and repurposing of billions of dollars in Russian assets to support Ukraine's reconstruction, is fully implemented. EBRD will be well positioned to assist in funding reconstruction efforts. EBRD is implementing an implementing entity for the trust fund that the World Bank has set up to use the extraordinary revenues coming from the frozen assets. EBRD is uniquely positioned to lead Ukraine's reconstruction through targeted investments in agriculture, critical minerals, and infrastructure, while supporting reform and anti-corruption efforts. It remains the only institution that has consistently invested in Ukraine's economy since the war began. It indeed has the knowledge, expertise, experience, and relationships to bolster the country through reconstruction and support the prosperity that will guarantee security. If the chairman wishes to respond, that's great, but I would be closing with withdrawal when he's completed.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Diaz-Balart, to respond to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me thank the sponsor of the amendment for bringing this important issue up. I know if I can add something to what you said, I would note the European Bank of Reconstruction and Development is unique among multilateral development banks in that it's focused entirely on the private sector and operates on commercial principles. But as the gentleman said, the bank's, despite its many important investments in in a multitude of different places. The proposed capital increase remains unauthorized. And I would like to continue to work with the gentleman, and we're going to work with the authorizers of the relevant committees on this matter as we move forward with the legislative process. And I look forward to working with the gentleman. I understand he is going to withdraw, but again, I thank him, and I look forward to working with you, sir, very directly as we work with the authorizers to move this forward. And I thank you for bringing this up. I appreciate that, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute to close.
Thank you, and I appreciate the chairman's remarks, and I do look forward to working with all of you in this matter, and I withdraw the amendment at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. We think we are now very close to vote, so rather than get into another and have to interrupt somebody in the middle, I'd prefer that we recess, subject to the call the chair. Again, immediately after the last vote, I'll be headed back here. As soon as we have a quorum, we'll start, so please act accordingly. And with that, committee stands recessed. Call the chair.
I know, on yours?